Hello and welcome to the Backlot 605 podcast. We are on episode number 134. I am your host, Casey Calderman. Join with me, as always, is Brian Mensing.
How's it going?
I am doing great, Brian. I'm very excited to do this episode because we are kicking off a brand new movie series here for
a returning movie series.
Our first ever returning movie series, too, as well. We when we decided to jump into the series aspect last year,
this was a no-brainer.
This was a no-brainer, and one that I said we need to do every single June because there are just so many different movies, and especially just out of the 5 movies we're doing this year, there's so many different genres of movies that we're doing within this. But we are talking Pride movies, and today we are talking about But I'm a Cheerleader, the 1999 satirical comedy, and we are not experts in this, Brian. So we thought, you know what? We better bring on some people that have actually seen this movie before and actually will know what they're talking about when they're talking about this. And I think that's one thing with our show we have said many times. Me and Brian are not experts at this. That's why we bring on people who are more inclined to talk about certain movies. And those people today, we are joined by Chris and Shekendra from the Vermillion Pride, just south of Sioux Falls there. Guys, how are you doing?
Good.
Doing excellent.
Awesome. We are very, very excited to have you both on the show. We were talking about the Ginger Dead Man movies before we started recording, which is not how I was expecting But I'm a Cheerleader to start. But as a full moon lover that I am, I'm very excited that we already talked about some full moon movies.
Your just peak of interest is like, okay, hey, I got a new thing to talk about.
Yes, Ginger Dead Man. We're switching the topic to the Ginger Dead Man series. Sorry, Brian, we are talking about them. No, we'll have to wait for a different time to talk about those classics of horror cinema. But first off, before we jump into anything that we have going on in the show today, I'm going to throw it off to our guests to give a little introduction, background on who they are, and the impossible task of asking them their favorite movie of all time. So I'll throw it off to Chris first, if you want to give a little introduction, who you are, what you do, and your favorite film of all time.
Sure. I'm Chris Larson. I hang out in Vermillion and do way too many things, one of which is Vermillion Pride. I'm one of the 3 organizers for that. They'll be coming up the second weekend in June here, if anybody wants to come in and see what we're up to. And my favorite movie is V for Vendetta.
I think that's a good choice. I think that's a very, very good choice.
Mm-hmm. One that my fiance is kicking me in the butt for every single week because I have never seen V for Vendetta.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah.
We went through all the protests last year, and you didn't even take a year at it. Huh?
No. I get yelled at in my ear every week about that movie.
You see, I'm having this issue getting my jaw back off the floor, correct? But I do want to at least make a point out of the fact that, of topics at hand, this actually lines up beautifully, personally, myself, I think, is considering who we have as the writers of this film. Because V for Vendetta is the Wachowskis.
Yeah.
So, I mean, honestly, it's a perfect one to line up with exactly what we're kind of getting into for this entire month in the first place. So I think that's just beautiful synergy right there.
And the Wachowskis we will talk about later on in this month with one of their obviously their most famous film that they ever made. But I'm gonna throw it out. Yeah. Oh no, let's not. I'm going to throw it off then to Shekendra. Give a little introduction to yourself and your favorite movie of all time.
My name is Shekendra. I'm just vibing in Vermillion for a bit. Let's see. I can't think of another movie, so my favorite movie would have to be. Oh wait. Okay. Yes. Either Undercover Brother or I'm a sucker for This Is the End.
All right.
Logan and them.
Mm-hmm.
But that's because it's such a great ensemble, beautifully done apocalyptic film.
Yeah.
One of the most quotable movies ever, and I cannot on a PG-13 podcast.
Absolutely.
That's awesome. Yes, I love both of those. I have actually seen those, so I love both of those movies. Have you seen Black Dynamite, then? I'm going to ask if you love Undercover Brother.
No, I haven't. Like, It's on my list, and it's been at the top of my list for a while. I just need to get to it.
Definitely recommend this. It's definitely in that same vibe. It's very, very funny.
It's
also in the same vibe as today's
tongue-in-cheek.
movie in a way. Yeah.
Yes, very much so.
So before we jump into like the box office and news, then I'm gonna ask you one more question. So you mentioned you have Vermillion Pride coming up here the second weekend of June. What are some of the events or some things to look forward to that upcoming weekend?
Sure. So on the 11th, Friday the 11th, there's a drag show at the Brick House at 8 o'clock, and we'll be bringing in a bunch of performers from all around the area. And then Saturday, we've got a non-binary author from the Twin Cities coming down, and they'll be doing a little speech / Q&A at the library at 11 a.m. There's a craft fair at the gallery off of the movie theater downtown at 2, and then we're doing a Pride pub parade starting at 7 on the 12th. Let's see, we'll be hitting up Carrie's, the Brick House, the pub, and the Varsity. And then on Sunday, the 13th at 11 in the morning, there'll be a Pride service in the park with a few of the local churches.
Awesome. Nice. Sounds like a very eventful and fun weekend going on in Vermillion. It's been a while since I've been down there, so maybe got to find my way down to Vermillion here in the next couple of weeks and definitely check out some of the events going on. But yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to jump into some of the other things that we got going on here, because for some of the things like Vermillion, I've been following their theater quite a bit, especially during the pandemic. And I know they've been off and on opening, and as me and Brian have noticed here in Sioux Falls, that's kind of been the same thing with our West Mall 7 theater, is closed, open, kind of just depends. But it looks like movie theaters are finally coming back into full swing, and I know the Vermillion Theater is finding its way back as well. So I'm very excited to see that cinema is just kind of coming back everywhere, and that's going to lead me into like this week's box office, where these results really show that movies are starting to come back, and people are starting to go out to bigger and bigger events. Like Vermillion Pride coming up, these events are starting to come back in full force. And I think the movie theater industry is kind of our way of looking at the events coming back in a big way. And, you know, number one this week is A Quiet Place Part 2 with $58.5 million, which is a huge opening for a movie, especially, I guess, still during a pandemic. But during any other movie season, that's a huge opening for A Quiet Place Part 2, which is a very low budget, more of an independent style horror movie. It is a sequel of a hit movie and has some big stars. But again, $58.5 million, massive opening weekend for this movie. Brian, what are your thoughts on A Quiet Place Part 2 opening up this big?
I'm actually pulling it up as we speak here. I want to say it is the...
I think it topped the first movie's opening as well.
That's definitely what I'm checking out right now. But also, I want to say this is the biggest opening we've had since the pandemic, because I don't think Godzilla Kong got quite to 60.
I don't think so either. I think this might be that biggest opening that we've had in a year.
Yeah. So I want to say, I think that's huge. And the part center, I have had the opportunity to go see this. I saw this on the Thursday preview, and my specific Thursday preview, at the end of it, actually had a short Q&A hosted by J.J. Abrams with John Krasinski, and he made an interesting point about this film, and these numbers show it. Actually, is their movie was right on the cusp when everything shut down. It was basically the first one to get shut down, because they even had their premiere. Everything went all smooth and whistles. To be like the first one to kind of be the first one that pretty much got knocked off the gate, but then be the very first one to kind of really show that, hey, you know what? People are this is really the movie that's bringing us all back to the theater. You know, Godzilla and Kong maybe was a little bit testing the waters and whatnot. Tenet obviously didn't do that, but this one really is the one that's kind of showing us, everything's kind of getting back to normal. So it's great to see this. As somebody who's seen the original and whatnot, it's fantastic in terms of it's on how it's doing, and
Mhm.
yeah. I'm still working on trying to get the numbers pulled up to see how it did compare to the original, but it's going to be on pretty comparable.
Mhm.
Opening 50.2, so it did beat its original.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome to hear. And what about Chris, Shekendra? Are you guys a fan of the first movie? Are you excited to watch this? Have you had a chance to watch this one yet?
This one,
I have not.
I have not seen the first one either. So good for them for being good enough to come up with a better sequel. Then,
Yeah.
Definitely recommend the movie. I mean, if you like The Office and you love John Krasinski, it's awesome to see Jim Halpert try to direct a horror movie, and he knocks it out of the park. And what I hear, he does the same in the sequel. So yeah, I'm definitely excited to check this out too.
I will certainly say is that if and when you do get a chance to be able to sit down and watch this, your TV is not broken.
Okay.
Because I didn't get a chance to see the first one in the theater. I saw the first one at home, and there were multiple times I thought the sound went out on my TV because it is literally nothing.
It's the first movie I ever went to that I couldn't finish my popcorn, not because it wasn't good. It was just I didn't want to eat and make sound during the movie.
Yes.
Yeah.
Number 2 is Disney's Cruella, the Emma Stone-led Cruella, $26.5 million. Move over, Glenn Close. There is a new Cruella in town, and she's doing pretty well for herself. Again, I think this is a lower number because it is on Disney Plus for like a $30 rental as well. And I think they must be doing pretty well with those. But again, $26.5 million is really good for this movie here. Again, another movie that was hyped up towards the beginning of that pandemic and then was moved around a bunch of times and is finally coming out here.
Yeah. This one's on my hopefully to get watch list and whatnot. But yeah, I think the only reason why this is I think this would be higher if it wasn't for the $30 premium thing, because you're gonna have those families that are like, instead of paying $60 at the theater to bring my 3 kids, I'm going to spend $30 and stay at home. So I think this is one of those ones where I question whether or not Disney made the right choice in doing the dual release with this here. I don't know, but it's still between this one and A Quiet Place. It's showing that the theaters are opening up.
Just to answer that question, yes, it is the right choice because they get a pocket $30 every time someone rents it, whereas they got to split it with a movie theater when they spend $12 or whatever for a ticket.
I suppose
Disney knows what they're doing. They're a multi-billion-dollar corporation for a reason.
I'm a shill for a Marvel movie, so I suppose you're correct there.
Yeah, I'm not excited to check this out. I will probably maybe pop it on sometime. I'm going to watch all 3 live-action, 101 Dalmatian, 102 Dalmatians, and then Cruella. Why not? I don't know. I'm not excited for this, but maybe pop it on some rainy day.
Yeah. By then it'll be free on your Disney Plus.
Oh yeah, I'm not paying money to watch Cruella. Sorry, Emma Stone. Number 3 though is Spiral from the Book of Saw, still doing pretty good, $2.9 million in its I believe 3rd weekend out.
Something like that.
Yeah, 3rd weekend out, I think is what it's at. Dropping down from that number 1 spot, $2.9 million. Not much to say about this. It's still hanging around pretty well. Same with the next ones that we got here. Wrath of Man, Jason Statham, $2.7 million. And then number 5, Disney's Raya and the Last Dragon, $2.57 million, which is just a week ahead of its release on Disney Plus. So it'll be interesting to see if this movie still is going to make some money at the box office when it is free for $5 or whatever you pay for your Disney Plus subscription this upcoming week when it lands on that service.
I'm still kind of in awe that this is just kind of showing where the numbers are for these latter part of the movies, because Ray has been available for purchase digitally. It's been available to purchase physically. You're right. I mean, in a week it's going to go free and whatnot. So I'm surprised that this is we're kind of running out of movies to fill the top 5, and that's why Ray is still there.
Mm-hmm. The question I'm going to ask our guest is, both of you, have you guys done the $20 rentals for any movie in the last year or so? Is that something you guys do? Because me and Brian have talked about this a lot. We haven't pulled the trigger on that $20 rental on anything yet. That still seems a bit too steep to rent a movie. What about you two?
Like I watch movies with a friend across the country, and so sometimes we'll rent like a movie, but not like a new one.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll rent a movie off of like Amazon or something like that. But no way, if it's above $5, we choose a different movie.
Right.
Hey, I actually caved the Pete Davidson movie. I'm blanking on the name.
Oh, King Staten Island.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did spring for that one. I love Pete Davidson.
I will say, at least, if there is one that of the ones that I have seen that have come out that premium price and whatnot, I can at least say that at least was somewhat of a wise choice, if you will, because that was a phenomenal movie that was definitely worth the money for me picking it up just as a blind buy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, Brian, what do we got for some movie news this week?
I see you have to go put the horror stuff like right at the beginning.
Oh, we always got to kick it off with the horror stuff.
All right. Yes, HBO to make Evil Dead Rise debut. We don't have Sam Raimi directing. We don't have Bruce Campbell starring, but we do have them as executive producers. And so as long as we have the original people that are putting this together, I'm comfortable with it. Just in the same instance of, the Evil Dead remake was a spin on the original. They weren't in it but they were producing it, and it turned out very well. So I'm curious to see how HBO pulls this one together. Casey, what is your Mr. I love my Evil Dead? I have the book tattooed to my arm. Think of this.
Obviously I love this series. It's on my body forever. When I heard this news of it making its debut on HBO Max, I was a little disappointed because I'm like, I just want to see an Evil Dead movie in the movie theater with a bunch of crazy horror fans and having them yell at Scream and at Deadites on the big screen. But if it has to be on HBO Max, at least we're getting another Evil Dead movie, because I love the series. I think it's the movie series is incredible. The TV series is just as good. Ash versus Evil Dead. The remake is one of the best horror remakes ever, and to see Bruce Campbell, Sam Raimi, the whole group that did the original series is back, at least producing. Bruce will make a cameo. I will put money on Bruce Campbell being in this movie in some way, shape, or form. And I love the concept for it. I don't know if you guys have heard the concept for this movie. It's basically about these two sisters that are in a high-rise apartment building, and then someone reads from the Book of the Dead, and it unleashes zombie Deadites throughout the apartment building. So it's them trying to survive in their apartments while crazy Deadites are chasing them.
Yeah, that sounds fun. I mean, I'm wondering how campy this one's going to be. Like the first one was so campy. Again, tying to the movies that we'll talk about later.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
we'll talk about later.
I do like the fact that we're kind of getting out of the country, getting out of the log cabin kind of thing. Give us something a little bit different, a little bit something fresher and whatnot. So it's nice to see they're like, hey, you know what? Let's just give us a little bit of a spin.
Yeah, I fully expect this one will be bonkers, goofy, crazy stuff going on, and a lot like the TV series was. That was just bonkers, off the wall, crazy. And this reminds me of, I don't know if anyone's seen Demons 2, an 80s horror movie that's basically also set in a high-rise apartment and has undead demons coming after people. It sounds a lot like that. I'm like, if it's that with Evil Dead, I'm give all of my money to HBO Max for that.
For the month.
Oh, I'll pay for my entire year to just have it for that one movie. Oh.
That or have the gargoyle chasing Rick Moranis in Ghostbusters.
Oh, there you go. All right. Yes. So this set piece of news, for the sake of being a superhero film kind of fan and whatnot, tells me it's like this is the nail of I'm not getting back into the MCU. Aaron Taylor Johnson star as Kraven the Hunter in a standalone Sony film, because Sony likes to try to do everything they can to keep a hold of their Spider-Man franchise, and he gets to be Kraven. And I don't know if I can picture him as Kraven.
So maybe we should set up who Kraven is and why this is even happening. I don't know why it's happening, actually, but Kraven the Hunter is basically like this mercenary that hunts the deadliest game and he soon realizes that Spider-Man is the deadliest catch that he could ever catch, and he goes after Spider-Man. But in these Sony villain movies like Venom with Tom Hardy or Morbius with Jared Leto coming up, well, guess what? Spider-Man's not in these movies, and that's what this movie sounds like it's going to be too. So I don't buy him as this badass mercenary. This is like where Joe Manganiello should probably show up back in the Spider-Man universe as Kraven the Hunter, or someone like big beefy, like maybe Hugh Jackman could come back as a villain this time in this movie. But I don't buy Quicksilver Kick-Ass as Kraven the Hunter.
Right. I mean, yeah, I think for the sake of like stature and whatnot, it's just I don't see it. You know, maybe Sony sees something I don't, kind of thing. But then again, I did see Tom Hardy kind of sort of as Eddie Brock, but I mean, I guess we'll kind of see.
Mm-hmm. Are you guys a fan of superhero movies at all, or are you kind of getting burnt out on how many there are and trying to catch up?
There's too many.
There's too many to catch up on. Although, I mean, I love anything that Tom Holland's in, so just because it's Tom Holland. So.
And that's another rumor we should. I want to bring up, Brian. Is that okay if we can talk about the Tom Holland Spider-Man rumor?
Okay, go for it. Because
it is rumored that it is going to be, you know, all these other villains are coming into his universe, such as Jamie Foxx's Electro is going to be in it. Willem Dafoe's Green Goblin, and that's rumored to be he's the main villain of the movie. So kind of bringing the Spider-Man series full circle, having Willem Dafoe come back as Green Goblin, leading a new supervillain team against Tom Holland's Spider-Man, and guaranteed Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man as well.
Yeah,
there's no confirmation.
Yeah, they don't. They're not. They're of the three Spider-Mans. The one who is the blabbermouth is not the one confirming or denying that he's in the movie. So, yeah,
I like how you're like, Tom Holland's silence tells me everything.
Yeah. The other two can deny it up, down, left, and right, and Tom Holland just not saying anything tells me everything.
You're not wrong.
No. Yeah, is that it? That's it for the news for this week.
There wasn't a whole lot going on.
No. So that leaves us plenty of time to jump into this week's topic, this week's movie, which is a first-time watch for Brian and myself, which is 1999's But I'm a Cheerleader.
Mm-hmm.
So before we even get into the movie, I'm going to throw it to our guest. Why? But I'm a Cheerleader. Why is this the movie we are talking about this week?
We were thinking of queer movies to watch, and this is the first movie that I watched that had there's no queer subtext. Let's just get that out in the open right now. There's no subtext in this.
It's just text.
Yes, It is in your face. But I watched it back I want to say late elementary school, early middle school. And
sounds like the perfect time to be watching a movie like this.
Oh yeah, definitely. But I remember watching it. I'm like, wow, I didn't know you could be gay. And then, as I've grown up, now I'm like, oh yeah, you could definitely be gay because hello. But especially hearing with Natasha, is that how you say her name?
Natasha Lyonne.
Yes, yeah. Because there's fandoms and things all over the place that are like, oh my God, Natasha, please be queer. And she's like, I'm not, but you can think whatever you want. And so it's so interesting, that she was in this movie.
Mm-hmm. I know when I realized who her partner is right now, I immediately was scratching my head trying to understand that dynamic.
Yeah.
Because she's currently with Fred Armisen, and I just... Oh. I can't picture these two together.
I get it. They are both weirdos.
I'm sorry, Fred Armisen.
No, I started because that for the sake of her portrayal and her acting in this movie and whatnot, that is the reason why I specifically looked up who is she currently with, because she does play it off very, very well. And hey, that's it's great that she's able to be able to portray that and feel very authentic in the process.
Yeah.
Because I knew going into this, granted, this is one of those movies where it's like, it's been on my kind of to eventually get watch list for many, many years, because I've liked her ever since American Pie. But the other reason why is because I know that like Clay Duvall is also a very much an openly, again, and is very big advocate of all this stuff, whatever. And I'm a big fan of hers ever since, The Faculty. So it's just like, I like the dynamic that they've been able to just show in this, just in general.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's one thing with this movie. Whereas we'll get into the plot and everything about it, but it's where you have someone like Natasha Lyonne who is very, very grounded in this movie, where everything else is literally turn that dial up to 11, and you turn it up a little bit more too. You're about a 20 by the end of it, with how outlandish a lot of the things are and how satirical everything is. But she is always very grounded in this, and I think that's something she's always been able to portray very well. Throughout her career, as being grounded and versatile all in the same, because like for me too, I was introduced to Natasha Lyonne from American Pie as well, but she's a very different character in American Pie
very much
in this movie. And I also watched her, just a quick aside, she is the babysitter in the mid 90s Dennis the Menace movie.
Okay.
With Christopher Lloyd as the creepy man who comes into town and robs houses, but she's the babysitter in that movie. So I was like, oh, all right, we watched back-to-back Natasha Lyonne movies without knowing it.
Yeah,
you just wanted a reason to watch Dennis the Menace.
I did just want a reason to watch Dennis the Menace, but it turned out all right in the end.
Yeah, it's so weird how like, especially when you're younger, you just don't associate that actors are doing the same or the same person doing different characters. It's just so strange. I'll sometimes watch like a little kid cartoon that I used to watch when I was little, and I'm like, oh my god, that's so and so doing this voice.
Yep.
Specifically, Dante Basco.
I was going to say the biggest one in this movie is all of a sudden Rufio shows up, and I'm like, Rufio.
Yeah.
I was thinking Zuko the whole time.
Before you guys jumped in, I did make mention to that. I was like, I'm sorry. The first thing when he popped up on the screen, I'm just over here just going, Rufio! There's a few people that are very, very well established supporting characters that, it didn't take me out of the film, but like certain people, like you see them and whatnot, you just all like, okay. I mean, like say for instance, like RuPaul, for example, like I love RuPaul in this here, but at the same time too, in the back of my mind, I get that's part of the satire about the whole thing and whatnot. I'm like just picturing RuPaul going, this is not gonna work in the end.
Yeah.
And not as in terms of the character, but as in like this guy's not gonna be straight by the end of it.
Right.
Which I'm amazed that they didn't do. Like, of all the weird, crazy things that happen, like, you would think that RuPaul and her son would have, like, gone off together or something.
Right, like of all the loose ends to tie up.
Right, especially after the whipped cream scene.
Yeah.
There's some fan fiction out there of all of the loose ends that this movie leads out on the internet. I guarantee there's a subreddit of fan fiction but I'm a cheerleader.
Yeah, probably.
Specifically for RuPaul too, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Oh, RuPaul probably alone has his own subreddit, and he probably moderates it himself.
Probably.
He doesn't have enough projects going on.
Right.
Speaking of side characters in this movie, when she first showed up, and she's only in this movie for the first, 10 minutes or so, Michelle Williams, very young Michelle Williams in this movie too, in a role. Now, when you think of her, you would not expect her to play such a small role in this movie, but again, a very important role too. Is that especially this movie has some great casting throughout this movie and faces that you recognize in other movies and stuff. It's just one of those type of movies that it's nice to see all these people with familiar faces that you'll see go on to bigger things after this, or maybe even more notable things before or after this too. In terms of like Rufio, you would recognize from Hook right away, but then he pops up in this movie. And you're like, oh, Rufio's in this. All right, that's an interesting take for this actor to take on a different role, so far removed from a Spielberg swashbuckling epic like Hook. But let's jump in.
He's still a lost boy.
He is still a lost boy in this movie.
That was a good one, though. That was a good one.
Really, Rufio was kind of that should have been my big clue that I was gay when I was.
All right, let's jump into the plot of this movie. It is a pretty simple setup for this movie. So Natasha Lyonne plays a high school cheerleader, Megan, who is sent by her parents and her friends after an intervention to this gay conversion camp led by recruiter RuPaul, and then the camp's kind of overseer of everything, Kathy Moriarty, who plays Mary in this movie. Again, just a cartoon character throughout this, and I love that. And there she meets all the other kids that are also sent to this camp, including her love interest, Graham, who is kind of like the bad girl, the I'm too good for this type of thing character that you'd see in other movies, but again, a character that also has the heart of gold, which I find just endearing in this movie. And their relationship is just, I find it just so endearing and incredible in this. And one thing I looked up as we're going to jump into this is some people calling this like the gay Grease I saw online. Do you guys find that comparison at all? Because
there's not enough musical numbers.
There's not enough musical numbers. Okay, take out the musical numbers.
Yeah, right.
But it's kind of the goody two-shoe girl falling for the bad guy or girl, and then they ride off into the sunset at the end of the movie. That was more so of what they're comparing as the endings.
Sure.
Yeah, okay.
But I'm like,
then yeah.
I can see that, yeah.
But I'm like, there's some of those in this movie too. But yeah,
and
what
we have the matching outfits too.
Mm-hmm.
There's that, you know.
Yeah.
I will say, at least for the sake of the beginning of it or whatnot, and maybe this is because I'm just so used to the type of character. Like, this is an unusual character for Natasha Lyonne, especially when you have it burned in your brain of all the American Pie movies, right? Like, I had a problem trying to believe that she was a cheerleader. Because I picture her being the one that's making fun of the cheerleaders, not actually being a cheerleader. That aside, like, she completely crushes her character.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, playing the, like ditzy.
Yeah, like that first 10 minutes that we're talking about when she's all like, and okay, like it. That's the part that was. And that's not to take away from what she did with it and whatnot, but she was owning that she was like the ditzy cheerleader kind of thing. But it was at the same time, I'm like, this is the same year that she became, the questionable one in American Pie. Like, talk about two totally different characters in the same year.
Yeah. Oh, okay. That was 99. I was trying to remember when that came out. Yeah.
I don't know. I bought her in terms of the world that this is building, because everything is turned up to 11, like we said.
Mm-hmm.
And she is totally turned up to that too, as the ditzy blonde cheerleader that is so naive she doesn't even realize that she is attracted to girls by the beginning of this movie. Like, if we talk about the opening of this movie, this has the cringiest makeout scene I've ever seen in any movie ever, between her and her boyfriend. It is the most awkward scene I think I've seen of any two people mashing their faces together. It is so awkward.
I'm just thinking about like having to either be the actor or like be like the person recording that scene and just watching her just open her mouth and then him going at her face. Like,
I honestly, asked the question of how many takes did that take to do, just because it's so absurd and so over the top and it's satirically bad that I imagine they were attempting to try to film that scene and kept cracking up laughing.
Which is so that'd be so upsetting that you're like, I just want to get through this terrible scene, and then you're like, and then they're like, all right, we gotta do it again. We only got 3 seconds, not 12 seconds. And you're like, no.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, really, for one of the movies based in camp, which is that over the top, like everything's turned to 11, like, because like all of the characters are very like archetypal, especially for the 90s. And so like everybody is just always having to be over the top, whatever their motivation is. Yeah, it's
that's when you bring up the other characters and whatnot. I think they do a very good job of being very, like you said, the very 90s, very stereotypical, like the Jewish kid, the goth girl, everything like that. Like everybody's turned up in terms of like the gay, like the one kid who's obviously gay, and everybody does their role very well, but they don't do it to a point where it's dumb. Like they turned it up just enough that you have fun with each one of these characters without actually like making it bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like pushing it just like the 2 steps over the line that makes it more of a like it's satirical, but it's not like spoof movie like over
right.
thing. Yeah.
And all the characters, I think, importantly fit into the world that it builds. Like how everything is just bathed in bright pink and bright blue. Everything's plastic. All the characters like are hamming it up to the camera. Like everything is built up as this world that's turned up super high. That all the characters fit perfectly into that mold of this plastic, neon blue and pink, nightmare fuel world. Like this feels like a Twilight Zone episode, but like an hour and a half long and just filled with bright pink and bright blue. And I think that's something that this movie sets up perfectly, is that we have like the different steps that are shown on the screen on title cards of each step of the program at this camp. And it's just built up with this goofy music underneath that further enhances the camp of this movie. I don't know, what was your guys' initial thoughts when the first time you guys ever saw this movie, of like just how crazy and outlandish and turned up this movie is?
Well, I think this is Chris's first time.
This was my first time. I just let her pick. I just let them pick the first movie that they came up with, and I was just like, all right, let's go for it. I'll watch it. So yeah, I was just able to just enjoy it for its 90s glory.
Yeah, like this. I would say like this is I would say my first time actually watching it, like, and actually like looking at it and understanding what's going on. And it was so interesting, just like going like the one colored character, and I can't remember their name, but they say that they're straight the entire time, and that they're just like, they just look gay. And like the entire time I was like, oh no, honey, that it's okay. Like not saying like, oh, it's okay if you're gay, but like, it's okay if I'm so sorry that you have to go through this kind of a thing. Like, it's so weird that it's such a campy movie, but there are times where like my heart went out to people and I'm like, oh, please, like, I want you to feel better. Let me hug you kind of a thing. Or even like at the end, like them coming together, I was like, cry. I had like a little tear, like the cinematic tear falling down. And I was like, you cheer for her, queen. Yes.
I mean, that's such an awkward, unpleasant moment though. But yeah, you're still like cheering for her because you're like, yeah, you're doing the thing that's gonna win her over. But
yeah, this movie is like surprising how well it balances like just absurdist humor with also just endearing characters too, and like all the relationships you just are just ultimately attracted to, and you're like, I want you guys all to just be happy. Everybody to just be happy by the end of this movie. And there's the sequence where they all go out, they sneak out of the house and they end up going to this gay bar and they start dancing. And this is where we kind of get like Natasha Lyonne really, Megan really realizing that she has feelings for Graham. And it's just so heartbreaking having her watch Graham dance with another girl and like just ultimately realizing what that all means for herself, having to leave then the bar and have this conversation between the two that ends up in their first kiss, and then having them two forming this budding relationship from then on out throughout the movie, and it's just so endearing and heartwarming, that scene of showing just genuine human emotion in this cartoon absurdist world that is just bathed in pink and blue nightmare fuel.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think we were talking last night about Graham, and I threw out Graham is such like a Janine Garofalo 90s character.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the hair color's even the same, you know, like if she was chain smoking, it'd be even more to the point.
I think Kevin Clay Duvall as Graham, you know, I was a beautiful casting. You know, it definitely led to the authenticity, just knowing her as an individual, but then just as the character type has been drawn out, like she fit that character type perfect, and to be able to be the counterpart throughout this whole thing.
Yeah. When RuPaul first shows up in this movie, that's something I want to talk about. When he's like this kind of this recruiter for this camp,
with that shirt
and his lines, his dialogue, he's just so freaking funny in this movie. I find him, just because I think his actual real life persona, knowing it now here 20 plus years later, adds to the satirical aspect of him in 1999 doing this role, and makes it so much funnier now, especially his character. It's just so funny, and hearing every single line of dialogue come out of his mouth, you just kind of giggle under your breath, because he's like so genuine about it, but yet you're like, yeah, but you're RuPaul. And this is hilarious.
That's again one of those casting choices I think was absolutely brilliant, is to have somebody like RuPaul in that role to basically show how absurd the whole idea is in the first place. Especially, you know, when he comes in with, is it something on the lines of like, now I'm straight, or I was gay once, or something like, because I know he says that as a dialogue, you know, he's got the line that says, and I was gay once, you know, the fact that, you know, he's able to ride that line. And I don't think you could have put somebody I don't think you could have put a straight man in that role and made it work. No. Like you had to put the gay man pretending to be straight in there, and who better than RuPaul at this time? Like, I think
for celebrity,
sure, and like the thought of like this movie is not nearly as much as Rocky Horror Picture Show, but it's definitely kind of like gotten its like I think it's gotten more like well known as the years have gone by. I don't know how well it did in the box office or anything back in the 90s, but I feel like now like people are going back to the movie and being like, oh my God, RuPaul, yes. And like, I don't think you would have had the same viewership now if you didn't have RuPaul in that role.
Yeah.
I will certainly tell you the minute that he shows up on the screen, I did have that whole grin from ear to ear. I'm like, this just got better. Absolutely just got better.
I know this movie was panned by critics when it first came out. Did not receive a lot of fanfare. This is like the definition of a cult movie that has just gained momentum from years on out after this movie is released, much like Rocky Horror Picture Show that just received zero fanfare and then has just exploded 40 plus years later and into what it is. And like, maybe we can talk about that.
40 years later
for Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Yeah.
No, not 1999 yet, Brian.
It's like, I'm not that old.
Eventually we'll get there. And I'll feel really old, but
right.
One thing maybe we can talk about a little bit is what the state of like teen comedies were at this time, because we brought up American Pie, and that's probably the biggest example of teen comedies during the late 90s. But then you also have like She's All That and 10 Things I Hate About You and Clueless and all these kind of cookie cutter. I don't want to say cookie cutter because I like all those movies, but they are cookie cutter. Okay. But paint by numbers, whereas the guy and the girl end up together at the end of this movie. Whereas this just subverts all that completely. Whereas you still get your love story ultimately triumphs in the end, but you had this just crazy, outlandish setup and build throughout this movie that. Like, this world is not the same world as like American Pie or 10 Things I Hate About You, where those high schools feel like they could be in the same city. This is in Bizarro world on a different planet.
Yeah. I actually just this spring USD did a musical called Xanadont, which literally it's the epitome of camp, and it is in a completely different like a different dimension basically, where the world's flip-flopped, and so the majority of people are queer, and it's like weird and not okay to be straight. And it's like the whole crux of the plot is that the two straight kids in school find each other and fall in love, and everybody freaks out. So yeah, it's just kind of in that world where it's just like so over the top and random.
All I know is with the title like Xanadont, that was not where my brain was going for a synopsis of what your film was going to be, because all I could just picture was Xanadu, and I'm picturing roller skates again, and like Olivia Newton-John. So
yeah, it's a bit different. They just one of the characters is named Xana, so they just went with it.
That's awesome. Maybe we can talk about some of those. I don't want to like kind of the Elseworld Bizarro type of things that turned up to 11 things in this movie, because like I said, this in a way feels like a Twilight Zone episode. Do you guys feel like it also feels like in that like kind of Elseworld type of thing, whereas like obviously this is not set in our real world at all, but it's dealing with real people in it as well, because all the teens feel very real in this world, maybe turned up a little and exaggerated for a movie, but also feel like they're in this kind of strange little world. Did you guys feel the Elseworld type of thing too?
Yeah, and like one of the things that I keep thinking about is like the intervention at the beginning of the movie, because it's supposed to be like a small town, and I feel like there's no way that this like group of people would have come together in a real world small town and been like, oh, like you're a vegetarian, so you have to be queer. Yeah. Like, I feel like it would have been like, oh, my girlfriend's queer, then like get out of here. And I feel like there would have been like that also made it else like otherworldly or like whatever, in like the fact that I feel like more people would have turned their back to her rather than being like, oh, we want to save you kind of a thing. I think there would have been like one or two people, but like that's like the intervention scene is just so interesting in that way.
Well, and I would certainly, I would agree with the intervention thing, because one of the things that keeps popping in my brain, especially when I'm watching this movie, is that there's a whole lot of cringeworthy moments, and I don't mean cringeworthy as in like they're bad. It's not like it's badly acted or anything like that. It's that I'm watching these things and saying that I could see something like this, as satirical as it is, seeing something like this actually happen, because there are people out there that are like that. Like, oh, we need to send you off to this place so we can fix you.
Yeah.
Right. I was like, I'm over here cringing at like, no, this you're supposed to be a supportive individual. You're not supposed to be doing, this, or you're supposed to be doing that, and like I think it really gives an opportunity to be able to put a lot of that in front of you, and they don't sugarcoat it. Like, they just basically say, hey, this is what it is, and you're going to take it because this is what really does and can happen.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think kind of because I felt that too with Megan's intervention scene at the beginning. Like, we're in her POV pretty much that entire scene, so you're really in her in her shoes, or you're wearing the pom-poms, if you will, throughout that. And it is kind of bizarro Elseworld there too, especially with how her parents react. They seem very calm about knowing this, and it's also very strange that everybody else around her calls her out as being a lesbian, as they say in the movie, whereas she has not realized that. Which I find very interesting too. Whereas, like, you look at probably all the other characters, they probably came out, and then their parents like, well, no, that's not how things are going to be. We're going to send you this camp and basically brainwash you to change your mind. You guys, what are your thoughts on that aspect of the movie? If she doesn't know at the beginning of this movie she's gay, and her parents and her friends, everybody around her tells her that she is, based on maybe just some typical things like she's a vegetarian. She has a picture of a woman on her in her locker. What are your thoughts on that part, like aspect of the movie?
Do you have something?
Well, I mean, it is kind of the premise, I think, of some of the movie is that like there's the one guy. I'm terrible with character names, but anyway, he says, "Oh, I'm an actor dancer," so oh, clearly he's gay, or the one's like, "Oh, I was a wrestler," and like so it was just like all of these different things that they're piecing together from all of the characters.
They're trying. They're the camp is basically trying to pull them in and be like, "What's that thing that makes you broken?"
Yeah,
kind of thing. Like, what is it that happened to you that makes you need to be fixed? Which again was one of those cringeworthy things. Like, it's for me anyway, where it's like, "Oh, I like to sing and dance. Oh, well then you must need to go get fixed." Kind of thing. Like it. Oh, yeah.
I mean, there are plenty of gay people who are singer dancers,
right?
But there's also that like part that isn't, and so it's like it's definitely they're like playing on like society's ideas of what these mean, like the colored character who plays softball. And they're like, it's so interesting, like, that you could just, like, say these things. And, like, they're obviously, like I said earlier, there's no subtext. There's not like, oh, I play softball, so, like, I must be gay. They're like, no, I play softball, so I'm gay.
So that's what makes me gay.
Yeah.
I mean, and also I could see having gone the first 16 years of my life not knowing that I was gay, it just like all of a sudden hit me one night, and I was like, "Oh, yep, there it is." I could see it still being like something that she might just have not realized.
Yeah,
right.
Like my mom always had me help her pick the color pattern for the flowers, and I was like, "Okay, Mom, you should have maybe known," but yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that answered your question, but
no, I think it definitely does, and maybe that's what the movie kind of presents too. Is that some of these characters did, by the time they got to the camp, already just knew, who they're attracted to. Whereas, like our main character is still figuring herself out, like any other teenager ever, just trying to figure themselves out and figure out their path in this world. And I think this is at least for her character. Like this is like a huge moment, obviously, in her life of discovering just who she is and where she will go on after this. Because obviously, by this point, she's literally just a high school teenager doing the high school teenager things of I'm a cheerleader, I'm going to date a jock, and we're going to go to prom, and we're going to do all the basic stuff. And then all of a sudden, her parents had this intervention, and I think that's kind of like leads a ball rolling for this movie and for her as a person too, of getting the ball rolling on where she ends up in her entire life. And I think that's just something obviously everybody goes through in high school already, is just finding yourself, finding out where you fit in. And I think that's where this movie can relate to everybody, is finding your way in the world, finding people who you can really latch onto and like grow around and trust. And I think that's what she finds in Graham. And that's where I want to lead into with another thing I want to talk about is Graham's parents in this movie, because they are the exact opposite of Megan's parents. Graham's parents, her dad tells her, like, if you don't graduate, you're not getting the trust fund. You're not going to get any money that I have. Obviously, he's a rich person doing whatever he's doing. But yeah, she's not going to get any money out of this by the end of it. And you can definitely think that's something on her mind of, well,
he basically says he's going to disown her.
Yeah, and disown her. So with her character, it seems like she probably doesn't care if her parents disown her. It's more of maybe I'm not going to get all this money. that kind of seems a bit of what's in there. How did you guys feel about her parents and how they're like literally, like I said, the exact opposite of Megan's parents?
Yeah, like I definitely know those kinds of people, and so it's interesting that like that was it was nice that they added that dynamic to like the family scene, because everyone else felt really like shy, like, oh, you know, my daughter's gay or my son is gay,
keeping it the secret.
Yeah, it's the secret, and he's like, no, you're straight and you better be straight or you're not gonna get the money. And like I feel like Graham is really just like that was kind of the thing that she kept driving home to Megan in that scene where Megan's writing the cheer, of like, no, you just don't get caught. Like I think that in Graham's head, if she can just pretend for a little bit longer, then she could have got that money and then could have like ran away with Megan, or I
deuces.
Yeah, like I feel like because they're all seniors in high school, so like she's probably thinking, if I just get to this last little thing, if I just graduate, then I'll be fine. And I'm glad she makes the decision to like thank goodness she makes the decision to go with Megan, but also like, where are you guys gonna find your money? You know, I don't know.
Which, you know, is kind of a nice aspect of campy movies, is that they can really touch on some like honest, like real life stuff in a more fun, lighthearted way. Like they in this movie, you know, like honestly, being disowned by your parents is a real thing that happens, you know, and so it's just kind of interesting that movies like this can just approach this with almost nonchalance, I guess.
Yeah.
Her dad's one of those kind of people you just want to jump through the screen and punch him.
Yeah.
With like all the characters and stuff like this, and like going through some of the characters that we haven't touched on too much, I do want to touch on I don't know what his name is in this movie, but he's Rufio. I'm assuming that's what his name is in this movie too. Is Rufio?
Yeah.
I'm not sure. It could be
Dante. It's like, oh, I guess I could just look.
Yeah, I guess we have IMDb on our phones.
He plays Dolph.
Dolph.
Dante Brasco.
I want to touch on him a little bit because he has a pretty vital role in this movie, as you know, as the plot goes on. He is caught with Sunshine from Remember the Titans, who is where I remember him from. They are caught together, and basically, the blonde-haired Sunshine, I'll call him, ends up in the literal doghouse again. No subtext in this movie. Ends up in the doghouse for a week in there, and then Rufio Dolph gets kicked out, and he finds himself basically at this house of two men that were XXX gays, or conversions.
They were converted, reconverted.
Converted, reconverted.
Now,
and
these are the same guys that also bring them to the bar too. Yes,
and so they kind of provide the safe haven for students, it seems like, that have been kicked out or escape or whatever from the conversion camp, and kind of provide them a safe place. And that's where Rufio Dolph ends up at, and that's where him and Megan and him are reunited back together, realizing that Megan has to go save Graham by the end of this. I love his little side character, so vital in this movie, and I think again he's really great in this. He obviously, we all think of him as Rufio, but he's such a different character in this movie. I love him in this movie. What about you guys? Is that something, like, obviously we all have thought of Rufio, but in terms of his character and what he does throughout this movie, I think he plays a very vital aspect in Megan's life and the story of the movie.
Yeah, I forgot that he came back later on in the story, so I was like, oh, well, he's gone. That sucks. Mm-hmm. And then, like, seeing him come back and then being, like, that vital, like, well, you should, like, go to her. And, like, you need every story needs that, but go to them. You have to go to them, obviously. That's how you prove your love. And
catch them before their flight takes off.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's exactly what I was thinking, but I couldn't remember what movie that was from. So
I think so that specific part of the movie I think is very crucial because number one, I wanted to see more of those two guys anyway. Like Richard Mall, I've been a fan of since I was a kid. I will watch anything that he is in because I think he's hilarious. He's the taller, bigger guy. I remember him as Bull from Night Court.
Oh yeah.
But is one thing with Dolph though, I think is it gives her the ability to have somebody she can relate with, somebody she knows better than just the Lloyd and Larry, to be able to come into this establishment and say, hey, you know what, it's okay to be who you are. It's okay to have these feelings. It's okay to be, a lesbian and just to embrace yourself as opposed to, what these people are trying to say, what these people are trying to say. He's just like, you just be you.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Another part of this movie I do want to bring up is like we've been talking about the bright pinks, the bright blues. Maybe we should talk about what that means and what that means in terms of this camp that they have of basically trying to hammer into these young minds of this is your gender, this is how you're supposed to live your life. Literally only can wear blue. Your cars, your tools you're working on are bathed in blue. Your baby room and the babies you have are all bright pink. And adds some great comedy in this movie too. There's one line in this movie from RuPaul that I just find hilarious is when he's fixing the car and where he's like, all right, who wants to go down? What does he say? Go down on me next? And all the guys
go down with me. I think
go down with me. Yeah, and then all the guys raise their hands. It's so funny, and it's just because it's RuPaul saying the line, and he delivers it with such earnestness that I find just absolutely hilarious.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that is a good one. I mean, have any of you seen Brickleberry?
A little bit.
Yeah, there's like one episode where the character Steve becomes a country singer, and he's coming up with all these great country songs that are very explicitly gay, but he doesn't realize it.
Yeah, that would be RuPaul in this movie.
Yeah.
That would definitely be RuPaul in this movie. That's one thing I loved about the lines that he was given in his delivery and whatnot is he was shooting for that I am as straight as I can be and whatnot, but everything that comes out of my mouth basically says, are you sure?
Yeah.
Also,
I know some people like that.
we all wanted him and Mary's son to run off together by the end of this too, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that's a deleted scene we need to have inserted at some point into this movie.
I want to say, for the sake of Rock, of all the scenes that he is in and how much the son is supposedly straight, is when the director's like, we're gonna pair you up with my son for the sexual simulation aspect of the program and whatnot, and they go outside and you just see him going all fun with that weed with the weed whacker and everything, whatnot. You're just like, there is nothing straight about that man.
Yeah.
Again, talk about awkward moments. That is another awkward moment with the sexual simulations. Like, oh, I feel so bad for these actors having to do this.
And his mom like talking about all this sexual stuff to her son. And
honestly, for the sake of the acting part of it, because you do run in those ones in terms of like sexual scenes or anything like that are filmed in or put into films and everything like that, and how awkward some of this might be depending on someone's chemistry and whatnot. This is that kind of thing because it's so stupid, it's so over the top, it's so, trying to ingrain in you why this is what you're supposed to do and whatnot. I imagine these people off camera are just cheesing out, laughing, and just having a good time because of how dumb the actual idea itself actually is.
Like they probably saved that scene for one of the last scenes they did, because as an ensemble, I feel like by the time they get to that part of the movie, like they feel more comfortable with each other to be like, oh yeah, this is just utterly stupid.
That's not the first scene. That's not day one scene film. Is what you're saying.
No.
I mean, that's how you can, really get a team building exercise out there. All right, everybody getting skin tight leotards. We're shooting this scene right now.
Yeah, with the flowers and the.
Yeah.
All I have to say is I didn't notice the flowers right away, and at first, as soon as I did, I was like, "What the? Oh, I see what they did there."
Yeah. I don't think the flowers were on at the very, very beginning of the scene. I think they.
Are you saying we have a continuity problem?
I think so.
Oh.
But I mean, like, what is continuity in some movies?
Yeah. I guess I'm going to kind of jump into, some of our, I'm going to throw it out to you guys. Is there some scenes out there you guys would like to talk about, or a favorite scene or a standout scene for you in this movie that really is like, if someone comes up to you and says, I have never seen, but I'm a cheerleader, what's the scene you're going to show them?
That's a good question.
It is.
Mm-hmm.
I gotta fast forward in my brain the entire movie. I just keep getting drawn to the final like cheer scene when she comes out in the cheerleading uniform, and like they're seeing like her Graham's smile like slowly grow bigger and bigger, and I'm just like, yes, like it's the radio at the windows.
Yeah, it's the say anything moment.
Yeah, it's like, if anything, I'd be like, there are some problems with the movie if you like, but it's worth it if you get to the end and you see this one scene. It's 100% worth the time that you watched the movie.
And that has a great setup too earlier in the movie where Graham just tells her like to Megan, like, there's only one thing I want to see is you happy, and if cheerleading is what makes you happy, I want to see you like doing cheers sometime. And by the end of the movie, when it finally pays off, you're like, yeah, you're like, you want to wave your hands in the air in excitement for it.
Yeah.
Probably for me, it was probably that first group therapy scene, where they're all introducing themselves and why they believe that they're gay. And I don't know, I mean, I really love that humor. I know that some people would probably, the younger generation would probably find that a little offensive, might get canceled.
For me, like, the scene that really sticks out is it's kind of like the montage of showing like what the girls have to do in order to pass this class, and then the guys are doing the same thing. Like, all the girls are changing diapers, and it's in this montage that you see Megan and Graham like connecting in terms of kind of just saying, "Oh, this is all BS. This is hilarious that we have to do this." And then the guys trying to play football or fix cars, like the stereotypical guy things to do. Or
RuPaul telling them how to like grab their crotch.
I was gonna say yes. I mean, in terms of all of those and whatnot, it's definitely going to be the kids breaking locks. Especially when you got the one who just can't figure out how to use an axe properly. Between breaking the axe and then just chucking it back behind him. And between that, and I would also say is the fact that, in terms of like the guys aspect of it, was the war scene. Where they're all wearing the blue helmets and the fake guns, and they're just all trying to run like they're charging to go attack something. I'm like,
when they first pop up, it's very like Charlie's Angels-esque. They're all like, and then they're like, and then they're running to.
Again, zero subtext in this movie.
No.
Yeah.
I guess I'm going to kind of wrap this into our final thoughts then, because we got if we talk about favorite scenes or scenes that really stand out. I guess we're going to run into final thoughts here. So let's go around, all four of us here, give our final thoughts and why or if you would recommend this to people, and maybe give them a little preamble as to maybe what to expect going into this movie, because like we said, this is a movie like no other. So if you would, how would you recommend this to people if you would?
Mm-hmm. What are you going to go first? Or?
I can go first then, and we'll go kind of round robin here. Yeah, so since this was a first-time watch for me, this has been on my watch list for a very long time. I had an absolute blast watching this movie. Like I said, it just combines some great comedy, some social not even subtext, like we said, just social text of the world, and also combining a lot of heart in this movie. And I think that's something very vital in like trying to achieve a great teen comedy, where you have to have a ton of heart underneath it, where you want like your main characters to get together by the end of this movie. And this definitely has that, like we said, with the cheerleading scene by the end of it. It's like, yes, you want them to grab hands and run off into the sunset together. It's such a great ending, and kind of leaves a lot of questions open as to their relationship going forward, everybody else's relationships, and what their futures kind of look like too. Kind of has this like the Dustin Hoffman movie, The Graduate type of ending, where it's like, where does this go in the future? Maybe they're not even sure of where this goes, but it's kind of in this moment of what's happening. And I found that just super endearing for this movie. So yeah, I absolutely had a blast watching this. And this is going into my like late 90s teen comedy rewatches with some of the movies I mentioned earlier, like American Pie and 10 Things I Hate About You.
Yeah. And, for me, I would say it's absolutely a movie to watch and rewatch, because for the sake of 99, I agree with you. For like American Pie and the teen comedies that came out of the late 90s and whatnot, this is right on par. This is one where, they're pushing the limits of what we used to have, what we have now, and whatnot. Natasha Lyonne and Clea Duvall are absolutely fantastic in this. And I think it's definitely because of the satire, because everything is cranked probably past 11 at this point. But it's cranked up all the way up, but it's not to a point where it's corny and cheesy. It's still very much heartfelt. And like I said before, I mean, anything that I felt would be cringeworthy isn't cringeworthy to the aspect of what the film is, but basically they're not sugarcoating it. Like we've said, there is no subtext. What is cringeworthy is because of the things that we're getting to experience, because that's what has happened and will happen, and stuff like that. So absolutely a movie that I think anybody should have the opportunity to sit down and watch.
Yeah. I guess the way I've suggested it to people in the past, and especially in the last like day or two since I've watched it, because I posted it on my Snap story, like it's very 90s. But if you take into account that it is a product of its time, it's a really good movie. And even then, even now in 2021, it's still a great movie, and it has a lot to say. And it gets it. It says what it needs to say in a way that is not like preachy by any means.
Yeah. I would definitely recommend it because of, again, all of the 90s glory that it is. And I mean, I would say, it is definitely like cheesy, but it's intentionally cheesy. Yeah, no, it's got it's also, I think, great representation of like lesbian couples as the forefront. I mean, often they're like the side story to a couple of gay men or something like that. And it's also nice that they get like so much humor and stuff in the movie too. So. Yeah, no, it's a great watch. I really enjoyed it, and I thank Shekendra for suggesting it.
Last question, then I'll leave on. But I'm a Cheerleader. Is we like to pair the movie of the week with another movie. If you were gonna sit down, have a movie night with your friends, and do two movies, what's the movie you would pair with But I'm a Cheerleader for this fun double feature that you'd like to put on?
Okay, so I would pair it with. Okay, so again, representation. So going back to a more gay male themed movie would be The Mostly Unfabulous Social Life of Ethan Green. Super campy. I've got it if you want to watch it sometime.
Okay.
It's really funny. It actually there's a lovely scene where they make fun of lesbians. They're in a bookstore and this guy is like messing around with a book and he's like, "What? This goes in the lesbian humor section and there's only one other book in that shelf." Anyway, it's hilarious. It really makes fun of everybody, basically in a very similar style as I'm a Cheerleader.
Oh my goodness, that's a difficult one.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Come back to me.
Okay, I'll come back. I have mine. Mine is kind of a newer movie. Is The Miseducation of Cameron Post. Came out, I think, 2018. Has what's her name? Hit girl from the Kick-Ass movies. Chloe Grace Moretz is the lead, and it's kind of like a serious take on this movie, But I'm a Cheerleader, where this girl is in high school and is sent to a conversion camp. And I mean, not to spoil the movie is almost the same ending as this one in a way of two people riding in a truck bed driving off into an unknown future. So I think it'd pair perfectly with this one. It's kind of an updated, modernized version of But I'm a Cheerleader.
I did see a Letterboxd review that basically said this movie crawled so that movie could run. I think just for the sake of the 90s nostalgia and the pushing of the boundaries that 99 brought is in us. I would want to pair this with American Pie, just simply because of the through line of the dynamically different characters that Natasha Lyonne has between those two films, but also too the fact that we have two totally different types of stories, and what it was during the type of things and characters and people that we got when we were trying to figure out who we were, trying to that next step outside of high school.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why, but my brain keeps going to Final Destination, like just pairing it with like something just like equally as like out of the bounds, just like crazy, but like in a completely different way. Like you'd watch But I'm a Cheerleader and you'd be all happy and like, wow, that was really nice. And then you're like, I fear everything.
So I'm not the only one going down the interstate looking at the semis when I'm getting in the other lane.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a fun one to pair with this. That's still that late 90s, early 2000s teen kind of movie to throw in there. Yeah. I'm surprised we have two different movies that have Sean William Scott in these double features.
Yeah.
Because I mean, come on, it's Sean William Scott.
It's Stifler.
It's Stifler.
No matter what movie he's in, he's always Stifler. But that has been our discussion on But I'm a Cheerleader, 1999. Again, this movie is pretty much available wherever you can, rent movies, or you can stream it online on a bunch of different places as well. So yeah, definitely check it out if you have not seen it, or if you have not seen it in a while.
I will say quick here that I've got Letterboxd pulled up here, and I was able I got that movie that you just suggested here, Chris, added to that list, because that is one that we did not have. So
there you go.
I'm always looking for more and more things that we can get added to that are ones that are definitely recommended movies that people need to see.
I really want to watch that movie now.
All right, we're going to wrap this thing up. We have some things we got to plug and let people know where they can find us online, and where they can find Vermillion Pride online as well. We'll jump into that. But if you like this podcast and you want to hear the rest of our series that we have coming up, you can subscribe on Apple, Spotify, Google, Stitcher, Amazon Music. We are on YouTube as well. Brian, where can they find us on the social media portion?
And the social media, well, you can search it. It's all going to be Backlot 605. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and our new Letterboxd HQ. You can follow us there. Also on Facebook, we also have South Dakota Film Community Group. Join the conversation. We just like to talk movies and have a good time.
Yeah, and if you'd like a little extra content or you'd like to help us out, we are also on Patreon, patreon.com/backlot605. $1, $3, $5 tiers, $5 tiers, you get a bonus episode every month. We haven't figured out what we're doing yet for June. We're kicking around some ideas, but yeah, we'll definitely figure that out down the road. But special thanks to our patrons, Logan, Blake, Andy, Derek, Lou, Corey, and Darren. Thank you guys so much for helping us on the show and supporting us. And we're going to throw it off to our guests this week, to Chris and Shekendra. Thank you guys so much for, first of all, choosing this movie so me and Brian can finally have the chance to watch this movie that has been on both of our watch lists for a very long time. And can you remind the people again where they can find Vermillion Pride online and when the events of this year's festival will take place?
Yeah, so the Vermillion Pride is June 11th through 13th. And you can check out our Facebook page just at Vermillion Pride. If you have any more burning questions, we've got a Gmail account, vermillionsdpride@gmail.com. And that's all we've got. We aren't classy.
We're not classy?
No class, no.
And I heard this at the beginning of the show, and I feel bad for not mentioning it before. But Shekendra, you mentioned you have a horror podcast. Did I hear that correctly?
I heard it correctly, so you better have heard it correctly.
I do. It focuses on horror, like experiences that what society views as minorities see as horror. Does that make sense? Yes. Mm-hmm. And so it's called Selective Dissonance. We're on basically anywhere you can find podcasts, except for Apple. Apple wants to fight me, I guess. We're also on YouTube. Our social media is @SelectedHarmony. But then the podcast is called Selective Dissonance. Yeah, and it's about horror from a minority perspective.
Awesome. That's awesome. I'm going to have to add that to my list because I am always looking for more horror podcasts.
Yes.
Yes. All right. Well, thank you both so much for joining us. This has been a blast, an absolute pleasure to talk to you guys about this movie and discuss it. And yeah, we have to find another time to have you guys on because I'm not kidding. We're going to get some way to do a Ginger Dead Man or something like that on this show. I will find a way somehow, some way. So hopefully both of you will come back to talk about Saturday Night Cleaver at some point. So, all right. So let's wrap this thing up. Thank you both again for joining the show. For Brian Mensing, I am Casey Kelderman. We will check you all out next time on the Backlot of South Dakota.